Awesome. Hey guys, welcome to this month's Pro Harbour.
Great.
Alright, so thanks everyone for coming. The event's recorded, as you probably gathered, so don't forget in video, don't be video. Alright, so our first talk is Andrew McEwan. So away you go.
Oh, right. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Thank you very much, Alex, for inviting me along. It's fabulous to be here. I am Andrew McEwan. I'm also known as the Savvy Marketing Guy. I help businesses with marketing, but in a former life, I spent many years on the wireless, speaking into one of these for hours a day with a name drivel. And funnily enough, people would listen. I don't know why, but they did. My first inkling that I wanted to get into radio, I remember it very clearly. I was 10 years old and I had this fascination for seeing behind the scenes stuff on TV, but there was also this kind of hidden performer in me. And I thought, how can I get to use the gear and all that kind of thing, but also do a bit of the performing? And then I suddenly thought, radio, that's what I could do. So I wrote down in a bit of paper, radio, in case I forgot. But next day I made a little radio studio for myself out of a shoebox and matchsticks, loo roll with, scrunched up paper, etc. Fast forward, I went through hospital radio. I had spent years in that, learning the tricks of the trade and the craft. I was also doing computing and data processing at Napier University in Edinburgh. I mean, I loved doing computing, and that you might recognize an old Commodore PET 8096 from 1990 with 96K memory, excuse me, on it. None of your 32K crap. I've got a disk drive for it somewhere as well, which weighs about 3 tons. I'm gonna have to dig that one out somewhere. I also had a VIC-20 and a Commodore 64, if you remember those as well. So I was doing university, computing and data processing, but I really wanted to do radio. Computing was kind of the fallback thing. So I went along to the local radio station in Edinburgh, where I grew up, which is Radio 4th. And I went along, knocked on the door. I said, is there anything I can do? Any help you need? Can I come in and make teas or coffees or anything like that, please? And they said, well, do you know what? We're doing this new thing where we're splitting frequencies. This was back in 1988, it was. And the government had just started saying to radio stations, do you know what? You're broadcasting the same programs on FM and on AM, and we don't really think that's a good use of your resources. You should be what they call splitting frequencies, put out different programming on FM and different programming on AM. So they were just experimenting with this. So they said, overnight, we're taking a satellite service from London called the Superstation, which I think it was Richard Branson was actually behind it. And Chris Evans started at Superstation way back then. And I said, but what we need is people to sit in a studio from 10 o'clock at night until 5 or 6 o'clock the next morning, playing in local commercials, because it was commercial station, and they had like three or four commercial breaks an hour and then a news break at the top of the hour. And back in those days, there was no such thing as computer playout or anything like that. So they needed somebody to sit in a studio, listen for the cue from the Superstation, which was always a jingle just saying, the Superstation. And then you would start your break. And the break, we knew how long the breaks were going to be. Like it's very sad that I can remember they were 2 minutes, 35 seconds long. I can still remember to this day. So you would be given, I would go upstairs each night. I did Wednesday night and Friday night into Saturday morning. So Wednesday night into Thursday, and then Friday night into Saturday morning. Those are the 2 days that I did. So you go up to what was called the jocks room, which was the presenter's room. And you would go into the drawer and you would pick out your commercial log for that night. You would hurry back down the stairs. And then you would go into the master control room, it was called, where there was this big wall full of cartridges. I have some carts here. I'm going to show you them again a little bit later on. But every commercial that went out had its own. Each commercial was on its own cart. So I would go through, all the night, look at all the numbers and everything, and then pull out all the carts, and then very carefully carry them through into the little studio that I worked in. And then you would sit there, and you would they say, okay, you've got 3 commercials for this first break. And, they only total, say, 2 minutes worth. So you'd have to pad it out with, okay, I'll need a promo in there, and I'll need a jingle. And so every commercial break that was coming up, you just prayed that you got everything timed correctly. And the way it would work was, you'd hear the Superstation, quickly fade down Superstation, and you'd fire off your first commercials. You're playing your commercials. And when you're about 10, 15 seconds away from the break ending, you would hit a button which is called PFL, Puffle Pre-Fade Listen. It just meant that you could listen to the program from London without it going out on air. And they played, there was this kind of whooshing noise they would play at the end of a break, so that we knew that it was coming to an end. And it was also just to try to make it easier for us to opt back in. So you're sitting there and you're just hoping that the jingle that you played finishes at the precise second that the song comes in on. And 95% of the time it would work perfectly well like that. And I did that for over a year. And there was I remember one night, particularly, it was Lockerbie air crash. I was there that night, was it 21st of December or whatever? And I was in there the night that the Lockerbie air crash happened. And I remember it distinctly because I parked the car in the car park, and you would go in, there was a car park at the rear of the radio station, and you would come in the back door. And as I was coming in the back door, it had just been breaking on TV news. There's been a plane crash. And as I opened the door, the final journalist of the day was coming out of the building, and he was saying, "You haven't seen me," because he didn't want to be hanging around. He thought, God, I don't want to hang around for this. But it was one of the biggest nights, obviously, of the decade. So all the programming went out the window, and I was feeding in reports from. We had people sent down to Lockerbie to send in reports. I was kind of feeding all this stuff in. It was a hell of a night. That there was another night where the Superstation was actually it wasn't the most professional of outfits, shall we say. And there was one presenter in particular, because there was a program was 10 till 1, and then there'll be another program 1 till 4, and then there was a program 4 till 6 or whatever. But there was one presenter who had this habit of not turning up all the time. And there was one night when the presenter that was on air, her name was Diana Luke, I remember, and she was saying, "Now just a message to all the TOs, technical operators, the TOs around the country. The next presenter hasn't turned up, and I am heading home. So get your music ready, guys." And sure enough, they played the news at the top of the hour, and then there was silence. So just had to sit there and fill with music until the guy eventually turned up. He didn't last very long. Surprise, surprise. He was let go shortly after that. But it's funny because some of the presenters at Radio 4 are saying, "You poor bugger having to sit there, 7-8 hours just sitting, pressing buttons every 15 minutes." And I'm in my element. I'm loving it because I'm kind of living my dream of working in the station that I'd wanted to work in since I was 10 years old. And the other thing I was getting, as time went on, they were phoning up, "Oh, now can you come in and do this and come in and do that?" Yes, absolutely, I'll come in and do that, because again, the technology back then, even getting a satellite feed from the States was kind of unheard of because it was so expensive. So we, excuse me 1 second. There was a syndicated program we took from the States, and it was the Billboard Top 40, and it was presented by a legendary radio guy from the States called Casey Kasem. I don't know if you've heard of him. You'll have heard him definitely, though, if you watched Scooby-Doo, because he was the voice of Shaggy. Hey, Scoob! That was him. And he did this, the Hot 40 every week. And the way that we took that program was shipped from the United States was 2 LP records. And the program was recorded onto 2 LPs that were sent out to all the stations that were taking it. And so we would sit in the studio, put the LP on, and then just run a tape on the record. So you'd sit there, waiting and waiting and waiting. And then there'd be little, bits of gaps for commercials in it. So you'd have to note down at what time the commercials were coming on, so that when the person that was playing it out on air knew when the commercial breaks were coming. They'd be sitting watching the timer on the tapes. And it might sound really mundane doing that kind of thing, but again, I was in my element, because I'm just learning things and just learning, oh, that's how you take the program. Oh, right, okay. But presenting was really what I wanted to do. And I would be doing demo tapes. I would finish, doing the overnight stuff, and then I would sit in the studio for a little while, and I would do demo tapes. And the station controller, the guy's name was Tom Steele, God rest his soul, but he was a bastard when it came to listening to demo tapes, because his office was at the side of the jocks room I was telling you about. And the jocks room was this big open plan office where the presenters would, sit and compile their stuff and whatnot. But whenever Tom Steele was listening to a demo tape, he would get you in the office. He would leave the door of the office open, turn his stereo way up high, and play your tape so that everybody in the office could hear. And you're sitting there and this, oh God, cringe. And so I did a few tapes for him, and finally he said, come in, Andrew. You talk like that. Come in. Yes, Andrew, listen, you're not fourth material. You're not really for us. But I tell you, there's this chap, Rod Webster. I don't know if you've heard, but he's opening up. We're opening up a station down on the borders called Radio Borders, and Rod's looking for people for that. So I've passed your stuff on to him. Have a chat with him. So long story short, again, I got a job at Radio Borders before it went on air. It went on air January the 22nd, Monday, January 22nd, 1990, it went on air. And I was one of the first presenters. It was Danny Gallagher, did the very first program. Then it was Paul Baker on after him. And then it was me in the afternoon, 1 o'clock until 4. And you always think the path to getting your job on radio is you might get what they call the graveyard shift, doing overnights or whatever, but landing a daytime program as your first proper paid your paid gig was just like, oh my God. And my time at Radio Borders was brilliant, because I worked there until, I remember it specifically as well, November the 4th, Friday, November 4th, 2005 was the day that I left. And I didn't realize it was going to be the day I left until I actually went in that morning, but that's another story. But you learned so much, because you had to do everything. You had to do production, and you had to answer the phones, and you had to do it's a whole lot of shit you had to do. But it was great fun, and there was a real kind of team spirit as well there. And funnily enough, not funnily enough, but I was I talked about Lockerbie, saying I was there when Lockerbie happened. I was actually on air when 9/11 was unfolding, and I had to sit there. My program turned into giving us running commentary on all the stuff that was going on. I don't know if you've gone